From CNN, Trump escalates attacks against Smithsonian museums, says there's too much focus on how bad slavery was. Now, that's not what he said. He said that he said a lot more than that. But of course, you know, the legacy media is going to do everything they can to say Donald Trump is a racist. He's a very evil, bad man. He's orange. You should all hate him. So from CNN, though, President Donald Trump escalated his campaign to purge cultural institutions of materials that conflict with his political directives on Tuesday, alleging museums were too focused on highlighting negative aspects of American history, including how bad slavery was. In a Truth Social post, Trump directed his attorneys to conduct a review of museums, comparing the effort to his crackdown on universities across the country. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future, Trump wrote. I mean, where's the lie, right? This is pretty standard when it comes to academia, when it comes to, you know, things like museums and stuff. It really doesn't focus on anything positive about the United States, you know. So CNN went on, Trump's comments come days after the White House announced an unprecedented sweeping review of the Smithsonian Institute, which runs the nation's major public museums. The initiative, a trio of top Trump aides wrote in a letter to Smithsonian Institution Secretary Lonnie Bunch III last week, aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. I'm not sure how that's a bad thing. I mean, Kevin, what's your sense?
You know, everything's racist, right? Everything's Nazi. Everything. It's just how this goes going on for decades. It just gets old. And you know, when Trump talks about that, I look at liberals every day, every night they go to bed angry, and every morning they wake up angry. And it's like, what can I be pissed off about today? And this is something I want to jump on him for, because the reality is, every country has good things. Every country's had bad things. Every single country. Why not in the museum? You can have what they got in there, but why not what he said? Why don't you put things that make America great? Make America the country everybody wants to come to. Mm-hmm. And you just get bashed for that. It doesn't matter what Trump says or does. I posted on my X account, I said, if Trump said air is beautiful and a wonderful big thing, they would start suffocating themselves. This is what they do.
So one of the lines that stuck out to me is how bad slavery was, right? And I would push back on that and say how bad slavery is, because slavery is still practiced in Africa, still practiced all over the Middle East. Yep. And it is a bad thing. But one of the things that they're leaving out is there is no slavery in the United States. No. There is no slavery. Well, arguably the 14th Amendment made it okay to enslave people if they go through the court system. But chattel slavery has been ended. There's no slavery in Europe. And it was the British that actually ended slavery
before we did. For
the United States, around the world. And that kind of, you know, that truth, that honest fact that the British were the first in human history to end slavery, because slavery was practiced, you know, by all human beings. Stop. Slavery was practiced by all human beings. The fact that the British were the first to end it, you know, is never mentioned in any of the, you know, major...
early 1800s, I believe they abolished it before, but way before we did. It took us a war and 600,000 deaths before we abolished it. But you know, you can still talk about the sex trade, though. That is a form of slavery. There's no question there. But that's not what this issue was about.
But in the United States, if you are found to have trafficked people, we arrest you. We throw you in jail. Yep. You know, we free the people that were being trafficked. So the way that they cast the United States in places like the Smithsonian, and we went over a little bit of this the other day about the way that white privilege or what whiteness is and stuff. The way they cast people is actually counterfactual, because they don't talk about the fact that white people were the first people to end slavery, the British, you know, that they went around the world and didn't just end it in one place. They ended it in the whole British Empire. And a lot of people died doing it. They fought. There was a lot of fighting over it. So I think that it's totally unfair to cast the United States as some unique evil. Tate, do you think that this is something that is going to resonate with Americans? Or do you think that it's something that is going to set Americans in set them up and make them to get all up in arms?
Well, I mean, I think Western governments broadly speaking, I mean, the U.S., the U.K., France, their entire history curriculum is just meant to demoralize their own people. I mean, because if you go, like, I've been to a lot of countries. I've been to Qatar, been to Kenya, South Africa, Israel, Japan, and I always love going to the national museums in these countries because they're proud of their heritage and they're proud of what their people have accomplished, and the entire museum is just filled with their highlights. It's like their highlight reel. But then you go to the Smithsonian, or you go to the British Museum in London, or you go to the National Museum in France, and every exhibit that they have there is just pre-built with an entire paragraph, like a Star Wars crawl style apology for everything that's you're about to see in this exhibit.
Land acknowledgments and the like.
Yeah, so if you're like a little 5-year-old in Washington D.C. or visiting Washington D.C., you know, from the heartland, or if you know you're from England visiting London, going to your National Museum, and you just see an apology before every single exhibit, that's gonna set in your mind early that, oh, I'm evil, my country is evil, my people are evil, and people around the world outside of the West do not have that problem.
Elaad, do you think that it's a bad thing to cast your own country in a positive light, considering the fact that every country does country things, right? Nations do nation state things, and sometimes those things are not good for other nation states or other people. But do you think that it's a bad thing to cast your own country in a positive light, or do you think that you should actually be as critical of your own country as you possibly can be?
I think you should be fair and call balls balls and strikes strikes. I believe the president's greater point here is that the Smithsonian institutions are choosing to focus on the worst things about our country and not focus on I think this is a battle of greater narratives. Are we a country founded based on white supremacy and that our founders are irredeemably bad, or is our country about overcoming and trying to live up to the values in our Constitution, about how we overcame slavery, how we liberated Europe, how we acted as a bulwark against communism? Or should we focus on all of our country's shortcomings and believe that our country is irredeemable because of them?
Have we really acted as a bulwark against communism?
I definitely believe so.
For a while we did, not lately.
I mean, depending on who you ask, but
Fair.
And I think it depends on whose values you ask, because I think people like those in the Libertarian Institute don't act as a bulwark against communism, but I believe people like Trump and the Trump administration manifestly do. But I think that's the greater point here. What are the values we choose to focus on? Having said all that, I will say the Black History Museum is a blemish on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Just architecturally, that is. It's an ugly building. It's like an ugly brown, if you guys wanted to pull up a picture of it, it doesn't fit in with the architecture of the rest of the National Mall. But I don't think that's what Trump was talking about here.
It's like a Toblerone bar.
Do you guys know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, it looks like the couple Toblerone bars stacked on top of each other.
It seems to be very out of place.
But the thing with like the Smithsonian and why this is so embarrassing is because this is in our capital. This is where
Look at that thing.
thousands of tourists visit. I mean, stuff like this, it's like thousands of tourists coming from all around the world, and they see this, and they see us apologizing. I mean, that's a terrible
look what they pass as art. The liberals love ugliness.
Tell me Jawas aren't going to come out of it.
It's weird to me what they do with their architecture.
Tell me Jawas aren't going to come out and they're going to shoot your robot and they're going to take it.
What's a Jawa? Is that
From Star Wars.
Oh, okay. I thought that was another AI.
No.
Robot or something.
No. But anyone that's familiar with the old Star Wars would recognize that. But it does. It looks like the Jawas, big transport. Anyways, it does look ugly. And I do think that it's worth, a society at least, like you said, calling balls and strikes. It is, we shouldn't hide the fact that there was slavery. We shouldn't hide the fact that there was Jim Crow. But we should highlight the fact that those things ended.
Yeah.
That we do not endorse those things currently, that we got rid of slavery in the United States, that 600,000 people died. More people died at Gettysburg in one battle than Americans died in the whole Vietnam War.
Well, more people died in the Civil War than all of our wars combined together. So that's quite amazing. That's 600,000 of our own people as well. So this is sort of what we're stuck at. But here's the problem. It boils down to where we are in the education system as well and through our universities, because we're not teaching civics to kids. We don't want people to know it's we the people. They don't want kids to know that. They don't want to teach them real history anymore. It's just incredible. When I was in school, I took American history, Far Eastern studies, and Russian studies. That was in my public school. It was amazing,
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a little town called Mound, Minnesota. It's about 25 miles west of Minneapolis, where unfortunately Minnesota's turned into California with its politics. But They still have a pretty good public education system to this day. But back then, it was amazing. I really was very fortunate where I grew up.
It's fascinating because on issues like the Civil War, as I understand, in some southern states, they actually teach it as the War of Northern Aggression. That's not how I was taught in
I don't
Civil
think
War
that-
history.
does
Am I
it-
making that up? I believe that's what
Back
they're
the
taught in
day.
the South.
Yeah, back
Yeah,
in the
I
day,
think-
I'm sure.
Oh, not anymore?
Yeah, I don't think that it's currently that way. I think it's probably in the 60s it was like that. I don't imagine that after the Civil Rights Movement. I don't imagine that was the case. But or at least after the Department of Education.
Well, now you're seeing a reaction. Like there was a story today, this morning, or last night or this morning, where the state of Oklahoma, their Board of Education, they want to pass a mandatory exam for all inbound teachers that are coming from California or New York, and they basically want to make them take a Patriot test. They're going to administer this. I think Prager, you might be behind it.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, you see these TikToks on Twitter of these teachers. I mean, who knows where these people come from, which sewer they emerge from. So yeah, I mean, I think Oklahoma's setting the standard.
Well, it's either be an Antifa member or be a public school teacher in California. It was a tough decision. Look, I mean, Oregon just had some, I don't know, they passed something where students do not have to be able to read or do math to graduate high school.
Go figure.
So what are they doing in school besides
what's the
putting up
point?
different flags?
Well, what
instead of
they're
the MAGA
actually
flag?
doing is they're learning how to be political activists.
Yeah.
Because if you can
Sure.
make children into political activists before they're even teens or whatever, if you can awaken a critical racial consciousness or awaken a critical consciousness in them, not only do you make them more neurotic and make them more likely to be unhappy, which unhappy people become activists. Happy, content people do not engage in revolutionary activities. So the leftists in schools, they want kids to be neurotic. And you make kids neurotic by starting when they're young and showing them all these horrible things about the world, right? Look how terrible this country is, and look, this was real, and these poor people here, and look, this is bad. And you show them all these things, and you end up with kids that are like
Useful idiots.
essentially traumatized.
There you go.
And they are useful idiots.
Well, look what Lenin said back in the Bolshevik Revolution. He talked about the way to control the population is through education, and that's what they're doing, and that's what they're doing here. We've accelerated on it, but we started in 1964 by taking the Bible out of the schools, right? We give it to prisoners, of course, but everybody was homeschooled prior to public education coming into the late 1800s, maybe, when we started public education. Everybody was homeschooled. You know, they grew up on the farm, they read the Bible, they could learn whatever kind of history they could learn, but we changed that so drastically, and the brainwashing of these kids is the biggest. I think the blessing of COVID is so many parents woke up saying they've got to get our kids out of public education. 2 million more families are now homeschooling because of that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you see such a visceral reaction from the left towards parents that homeschool their kids, or even religious schools. I mean, they also have an axe to grind with religious schools, and the reason is because the kids that come out of those schools end up emulating their parents more than they end up emulating their teachers, and that's a huge problem. Like you said, if there's any sort of
They want control. They want control.
precisely, yeah.
What's interesting, go back to the 60s with those parents, I mean, and the whole hippie movement and all that, and move 60s and the 70s. The whole thing back then was we are against the man. The man was the government. Those same people did a 180 during COVID.
Yeah.
And said, trust the man and don't question science. So I laughed at that all the time. I go, but that's what science does. Questions.
When I hear people say those kind of things that in the 60s they were saying don't trust the man and they were against the man, even things like they were against the Vietnam War, I push back, and I don't think they actually were against the man or against the Vietnam War. They just were against the people in power because they were out of power. They were against the Vietnam War because America was fighting communists, right? The communists in Vietnam, the North Vietnamese. If it were, I mean, Jane Fonda went to Vietnam, and she was very happy to take pictures with the Viet Cong, the fighters, the military of the North Vietnamese. So it wasn't. I don't think that they were actually against the man. They were against the United States. They were against capitalism. They were against the status quo here in the West. But they weren't against they weren't against powerful centralized government. They were very pro centralized government because they were communists. They would call themselves anarchists and probably LARP as anarchists, but they certainly weren't.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.